I'm not very good at swimming, so.
I'm decent at it, but okay. Welcome to the neighborhood. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cookie Pocket. This podcast is about film. This is episode 42, and today we're going to be talking about Edward Scissorhands, arguably Tim Burton's masterpiece. Last time I joked that this is probably the most well-known and normal movie I've ever recommended for this podcast, so I would be kind of surprised if many members of our audience haven't seen this film. But a basic description, it's about a man named Edward, who was created by an inventor with scissors for hands. And he lives alone on a mansion up on a hill until one day the Avon lady finds him living there alone and decides to take him back down to the neighborhood where she lives. And the film's sort of about his trials and tribulations associating with other people in this suburban society. Sort of. It's a very weird movie, as Tim Burton's are generally. But why don't we start with overall thoughts, like we always do. What did you guys think of Edward Scissorhands? Christian, I know this was your first time seeing it. I don't know about you, though, Mitchell.
It was my first time, too, actually.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Interesting. All right,
Christian,
I guess I'll
can
start
go first.
I was very pleasantly surprised. I wasn't really sure what to expect from this. This was my first time seeing this, and I hadn't taken in any promotional material. I just knew Tim Burton, Johnny Depp, and Edward Scissorhands, and I figured it would be a kind of... I would hesitate to ever use the word normal to describe Tim Burton, but a normal horror film of sorts, which is not at all what this was. Much closer to something more up my alley in form of a romance, and
yes.
I quite enjoyed it. I probably preferred the first act to the rest of it, and the sheer hilarity, at least for me, when I'm being like slapped in the face repeatedly with Burton's utter disregard for genre conventions and predictable outcomes, like when she just very quickly summarily decides to bring Edward home with her.
Yeah,
that was utterly hilarious to me, and
yeah.
I'm not in the habit of laughing out loud at many films, certainly not when I'm alone, but this film got me like at least 4 times, maybe more. I really found especially the first half to be quite hilarious, and I thought visually it was really beautiful. I love the sort of pastel thing going on in the suburb. Kind of took me back to a little Jacques Demy Cherbourg feel there, which I always enjoy. And I think Johnny Depp really stuns and does everything he's got to do, and his character could not be less like Jack Sparrow, and he's still pretty perfect. So props to him. I really enjoyed it. 4 out of 5 for me, and I would definitely watch again and recommend to everyone.
Okay. Mitchell.
I gave it a 4+.5 out of 5. And I really liked it a lot. And I've watched almost all of Tim Burton's movies ever, probably.
Wow.
And I've always generally liked them. There's been a few like, yeah, you shouldn't have tried that kind of things, but usually they're pretty like very big hit or very big miss a lot of the time. And I think this was right up his alley. Definitely this is all him, you know. You just, his vision is leaking through everything, George Lucas style. And it's just, it's really, really weird. And it takes about like 20 minutes for you to like fully engage yourself in all of the weird things going on. And the style, Zach, the style is all over the place, right?
We'll talk about that, yeah.
Of course. And, yeah, I really like the story. I've heard a lot that it's really similar to Frankenstein thematically, but I feel like it's so stylistically different and so modernized. It has a lot of 90s influence as much as it does kind of 50s, 60s influence. And also just in general, like exaggerating everything, like having the townspeople be extremely normal or extremely normalized, at least at first. But then you kind of realize that the normal is the abnormal and the abnormal is the normal. And then having, Johnny Depp and Edward and all that being gothic and black and whites and things like that. Just all those extremes and, the comedic moments always hit for me as well. So I also actually laughed out loud when she just like, oh, I'm just gonna take you home now, kind of thing. And you know, it all makes sense, and it all really wraps together well. And I also kind of preferred everything kind of unrolling, and all of the townspeople reacting and taking advantage of Edward, and at the same time also being disgusted by him and things like that. So, you know, a very kind of cliche. All of the cliches are disguised by all of the style, and that's and I think Tim Burton has a really unique way of filming in a lot of different ways, and he just really makes it his own film, and there's a lot to appreciate with that, and to see his vision realized so many different times in other movies, and him having so much consistency in that is really respectable. So I think this is definitely one of his best ones. I'd have to look at other films to see if they're better, in my opinion, but this is definitely like top 5 probably for me for his films.
Yeah. So this is a film. It's not one of my favorite movies, but it's a movie that whenever I watch it, I really do enjoy it. Interestingly, I don't actually like the build-up in this movie as much as I enjoy the later stuff, where we learn more about Edward, and we start to see more of Edward's relationship with Kim, and how that may or may not play out. I find that stuff really interesting, a little more interesting than sort of the fish out of water stuff early on, where he's just sort of, what's Edward gonna do to the waterbed? How is he gonna react to that? Like, I mean, that's kind of amusing, but I find that stuff less interesting than the later, kind of more deeper seated, how is he going to mesh into society stuff. But I do really enjoy it. I think it's a very melancholy movie. It's a very bittersweet movie, especially the ending. The ending of this movie, the very ending, really gets to me. And there's not a huge amount of movies that can do that. I think it's kind of appropriate that we watched Bride of Frankenstein not that long ago, because the ending of this movie and the ending of Bride of Frankenstein get me in kind of similar ways. But I think it's a great film. Like we alluded to, I think it's one of Tim Burton's very best, and I think it's one of the films that he has one of the strongest personal connections to. And for that, it gets a 4 out of 5 from me. So Mitchell touched on this jokingly, but now is time to talk about the style of the movie. This movie clearly has a real visual style, particularly the production design by Beau Welch has a big influence. Christian, you mentioned the Jacques Demy, Jacques Tati style, kind of pastels of the houses. So I just wanted to ask, does that style contribute to the narrative for you, or do you think it kind of distracts from the narrative? I ask because in the past we've had situations, Christian, where you felt that the style takes away from the plot or the characters, perhaps. And in a film with a big, overwhelming style like this, do you think it works, or do you think it doesn't? And why do you think it might work here where it doesn't in other films like, say, Bram Stoker's Dracula?
I think this is what legal professionals refer to as entrapment, Zach.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to take the bait and say that it works. The style does work and uplifts the story, I would say. And Mitchell alluded to this in his initial thoughts, but the pastels work even more because of the very harsh black and white setting of Edward's castle and Edward himself, and the sort of like bringing him into that new space. And it's an instant visual. Pretty much anytime Edward is on screen, that he is very much out of place, whereas everyone else is settled in, like even just down to how pale and gaunt his skin is, and that is not something you might think about when you're watching the movie consciously, but I think subconsciously and aesthetically your brain is going to instantly sort him from everyone else on the screen. So I think that's a pretty clever device, and serves to bolster the fish out of water thing. And I don't know if there's any points in which the style grows to be too much, because I think that's kind of like a baseline that's set comfortably. There's a lot of style from the beginning moving onward, but it never really takes big jumps or big dips. So I think even though it is very stylistic, it is consistently stylistic to that same extent, and it suits the story well. So you win this time, Zach.
I agree with Christian, but I was saving my ammunition for the story because the story is actually something, Zach, okay? And the story is not just a fish out of water story, because it's modernized to a degree where it's not just he's instantly rejected, because it's a lot more complex than that. In fact, all of the suburban people have their own interests and their own aspirations concerning him. Some of them, except the one lady who's super religious and doesn't want to have anything to do with him, right? But that even adds more dynamic, because you have to have that extreme, right? But most people, like in real life, are generally sympathetic to people, even if they hold their own prejudices. It only takes one or two things for someone to confirm the prejudices for certain people, if not everyone within a mob, with the mob sense, kind of just instantly turn on them. And there was one shot that was panning out that looked literally, it might just be a cliche kind of pan out, showing the neighborhood, but it looked exactly like the Maple Street episode from Twilight Zone. And it just reminded me of the exact same thing, because he was running, everybody's running around concerned about where Edward is, and the police are looking for him and everything. That frantic ending is also very compelling, by the way. And then having the dramatic and romantic undertones, like I had said in my review. I feel like that just adds even more dynacity. I've tried this word so many times. Non-staticness, dynamics to the story. There's a lot of different perspectives to look at it by, and it's not just, even with the language, because they do refer to a person with disabilities to remain PC. They slowly refer to him as more derogatory terms as they go on, which is another subtlety. So tons of subtlety on top of the underlying romantic growth with Winona Ryder's character. I think the story is magnificent, and I think it stands alone, and I don't think there's any major problems with it. So in terms of the style, I mean, like Christian had said, I completely agree. It acts as a baseline, and I think it's a perfect representation of how this is kind of like a modern fairy tale. And there's a lot of different, distinct things going on, and it does occasionally conceal cliches, like him getting the Winona Ryder's gang or whatever from the van with the flames on it, leaving him and then getting him in trouble, and him not dying, and all those things we've seen that a million times before, but it lends to the overarching story and to the style that Tim Burton aggressively uses in every single film. So very much like one of his most Tim Burton-y films ever, and I think it's one of his best stories as well.
Yeah, something you pointed out that I think is really important is the sort of the progress of the words to refer to Edward's disability throughout, which I think is most pronounced. I hadn't recognized this on previous viewings, but I think it's most pronounced in there's a man towards the beginning of the film where they're all at a barbecue and they're kind of introducing Edward to the neighborhood, and there's a guy who walks up and he tells him, "Don't let anybody ever tell you that you've got a handicap." And then at the end of the movie, when he's on the run, that same guy is asking, like, have they found him yet? The cripple? Like, so even this guy who was at one point, like, supportive of Edward has entirely flip-flopped without really ever even being there for any of the things that turned everybody else against him. Right. It's just a couple bits of word of mouth, and he's totally against him. But I will agree with you guys. I am a proponent of style most of the time. But I do think that here the style perfectly complements the story, as opposed to maybe some of the other films that we've talked about this season that I have recommended, where the style is kind of its own thing and sort of eclipses the story. I don't think that's the case for all Tim Burton movies. There's some later Tim Burton movies where the style kind of just eats itself, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or Dark Shadows or something like that, where it's just all Tim Burton wacky architecture and weird shapes, and it totally takes over the story. But here it works, and I'm really glad, Christian, that you mentioned kind of the dynamic between where Edward is from, up on the mountain. You've got these dark shapes and lots of different twists and curves and really interesting architecture, whereas down below in the suburbs, everything's at right angles, only 4 colors. Was one of the things Bill Welch mentioned. He only used like 4 colors for pretty much everything in the suburban neighborhood. And I like that when Edward comes down, he starts to bring kind of some of his creativity and difference to the neighborhood in the way that he trims the hedges and he gives people haircuts, and He gives dogs haircuts, and he kind of takes away some of that normality. And the wife, the Avon lady, who takes him down to the suburbs, is it finally able to crack a skin tone that'll be able to kind of conceal his cuts. And there's like there's a brief fleeting moment where everything is kind of as it could be, and then it just totally falls apart immediately after that. But I like that you get that dynamic, that sort of seesaw effect before things totally fall apart again.
Totally.
Did you have?
I don't know. I guess I have one little thing. To add on to what you were saying, I think it's a really important and great touch that Edward sort of letting his weirdness change the neighborhood a bit. I think it's a strong message and an important one that the changes he brings are for the better, and they make people happier, and everyone's like, their surroundings are a little bit more interesting, and people feel more in their own skin when he like restyles their hair for them. And there's something about Edward's creativity that makes people feel more at home, and just generally makes the location better, as opposed to just being more creative or more weird or more different. And I think it's important that that's impressed upon.
Yeah, definitely. I think there is a real emphasis before Edwards kind of starts to have an effect on the neighborhood on the mechanical nature of this sort of suburban society. There's that one shot where it's like early morning and all the husbands go out to their cars at the same time and pull out and drive away to work, and it's like a factory setting pretty much, day in, day out. There's other shots of like, there's another shot earlier where all the husbands come home and all the wives go from the corner to their houses. It's just like clockwork. But when Edward's introduced, you get more variety, and like you said, people feeling more comfortable and more free to just sort of be themselves. So I want to talk about artistic influences a little bit as well. We mentioned Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. What else do you think this film is drawing upon? And do you think those influences feel natural and well incorporated, or are there points where they sort of stick out and don't necessarily feel like they belong to you?
That's a good question. Well, I did mention the sort of like demi-French pastel feel, and I think that's used nicely. I don't have the same encyclopedic film knowledge as Zach, so I'm not sure if I can go much deeper than that. But I will say I think Vincent Price was a very natural choice as Edward's, I guess, creator. There's this very benevolent and sincere and just all-around warm feeling around Vincent Price every time he's on the screen. It's such a breath of fresh air. I don't really know what I expected. I thought he'd be maybe more of a maniacal evil genius Victor Frankenstein type, and he felt very consciously and intentionally different from that. And I thought that was delightful and sort of helped to contextualize the weirdness in I guess older horror projects without overwhelmingly being negative or cast in this like glow of evil. So I don't know if Price qualifies as an influence in the way that your question was asked, Zach, but I think he was a very natural choice, and while he wasn't on screen much, he added a lot to the movie for me.
Yeah, totally. And I think I mean, of course they couldn't have planned for this, but I think there's sort of an extra bit of emotional weight lent to his character in this film, in that this was his last major role in a film. Yeah. So when his character kind of dies in this film,
that was so sad.
Not only saying goodbye to that character, we're kind of saying goodbye to Vincent, which I think is really effective and kind of always gets me when I watch this movie. Yeah. Mitchell, though, what were your thoughts on influences?
Yeah, I don't have big brain Zach knowledge, but I don't know. Like, we already kind of talked about the fish out of water thing. We've seen that and everything. School of Rock. Beverly Hills Cop. I don't know. Pleasantville something. There's a I don't know. Anyway, I don't know. I like I had kind of said. I feel like that when the pendulum swings one way with Tim Burton, he's always gonna swing it the other way, tonally. And I think that how aggressive he is with that and just everything is really, it adds so many layers to the story we've heard a million times. And we were kind of talking about A Quiet Place, and you kind of I've seen the original one, and I haven't seen the sequel. When it comes to like when I watched the first one, I felt much more it was like a one-trick pony rather than something that was like constantly like being developed and explained and something. I kind of felt like it was kind of just relying on the fact that the monsters are influenced by sound, so just be quiet, and that's it. That's all you have to be. Edward Scissorhands, just a guy with scissors. It's like if you just try to logic your way out of it, it's so much harder, because Tim Burton kind of creates this universe, and it's like all of his films kind of take place in the same universe pretty much. And he puts so much effort in trying to make it such an otherworldly place that feels at home to you, and you can relate to it so much even though it's so different. And that, I think, is one of his best qualities as a director. And I don't think that's really been replicated too many times, at least to the extent that I've seen from other Fish Out of Water films. And that's kind of what makes it. Frankenstein's a little bit more grounded and a little bit more, focusing on the philosophy and trying to make it a really think piece, kind of bigger idea type of thing. This is kind of a fairy tale that you can take your own ideas out of. It's not something that's trying to be big, super big, and super enveloping, or like you had mentioned about the style, to the stylistic to the point where it eats the story. So just another reason why it makes it unique.
Yeah, I think it's a great point you mentioned, that he kind of creates this unique fairy tale world where Edward has scissors for hands, for instance, but you don't go like, why does he have scissors for hands? It feels like part of the world. There's a lot of things in this film like that. Towards the conclusion, when Edward is making ice sculptures, you don't go, how did he get that huge block of ice in their backyard? It's just, you go, it's there. Like, it's part of the world. It makes sense. In this world, there's ice there. Same thing with the very end, where it snows because he's making those sculptures up in the castle. Of course, that's absurd, but it's a fairy tale. It's a world,
but I love it.
Where that could happen, and it totally works. Yeah. So in terms of influences, I think you hit upon the idea of, Frankenstein and those old Universal horrors, I don't think quite match the tone exactly. But they do have similar themes of Phantom of the Opera, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein's monster, all these characters that kind of want love and friendship, but there's something fundamental about them that prevents that from being accepted by other people. And of course, those characters then go on to do destructive, murderous things in order to achieve it, so there's a difference there. But like you said, Mitchell, Tim Burton swings the pendulum the other way, and he turns our Frankenstein's monster in this film into a totally sympathetic, essentially harmless creature where he doesn't do those violent things. So it's entirely a reflection of the society that he interacts with when he is rejected. Now, final question here. I want to dig deep on this one, and we're gonna do some real directorial examination here. What do you think Tim Burton's saying about his own life and experiences through this film? And do you think you can relate to that in any way?
Oh dear.
Oh god. This is like the middle school Frankenstein trial, trying to figure out if the creature or Victor is the one that caused the crimes. I think he's trying to say that he's not weird. And he's trying to say, he's not trying to be like, I'm weird and I'm proud of it. He's not trying to say I'm totally different and everyone else just doesn't understand. He's trying to say, he's going like the next level and saying that everybody else is weird except him. And he's saying that everybody trying to be normal and trying to fit in with society is what's wrong with society. And that it's not just about being different is better. It's about being proud of what you're born with, and being proud of your vision and what you're trying to accomplish in life, and not just not letting anybody else influence that at all. Just pretty much, it's kind of like a semi-advanced way of just thinking that I'm being different is better, but it's really just I think that it's not always approached in film correctly, and I feel like that he he's so self-aware that he's freaking insane, and he's totally accepting of that, and he's accepted it to the point where he thinks that is he wants to bring people along on his journey. He doesn't want to be on anybody else's train. He wants to be the conductor, you know. Kind of like, if it reminds me of the scene from Willy Wonka when he's not Charlie, but you know, Willy Wonka, the original movie. Yeah.
Yeah, that's well said, Mitchell. That's much better than anything that was going through my head. That's a hard question to answer.
Yeah,
but I think Mitchell kind of answered it perfectly. I think that the idea that Edward is the normal one is probably most reflected in the superficiality of everybody else in the suburb.
Yep.
Like, particularly that horde of Karens that like to gossip over the phone.
The horde of Karens.
Yes, and even in the family that kind of takes him under the wing. Like Alan Arkin's character has this line where he's talking about like, you should get a small business. I'm sure it'll be mighty fulfilling. I've got no experience with it. Yeah. And it's like everything that they're operating around. There's some like layer of film over it.
Yeah.
Where there's like a sheen over everything that the other people say and do. But Edward is just Edward, and that sort of genuine presentation cuts through. So in a broad stroke sense, yeah, I'm sure Burton relates immensely to his titular character, and I'd like to think most viewers do too. I'm sure all three of us did. I certainly did.
Yeah.
And I think that's a mark of it being a good film. And apologies to any of our viewers that are hearing a thunderstorm going on behind me, but let's just pretend we're recording this in Edward's castle.
It's the Terry Gilliam Don Quixote effect with the oh man, Adam Driver's just Terry Gilliam trying to make the film. So sad. Oh, that's my dog. Okay.
But yeah, to get back to Edward Scissorhands, I think you hit on a great point there, Christian, when it comes to the kind of the film that exists over what our suburban characters do and say. I don't think it's necessarily mean-spirited, because I don't think that Alan Arkin or any other member of the family is necessarily out to hurt or take advantage of Edward. I think that Alan Arkin is very well-meaning and very funny throughout the entire film. I love his you can't buy the necessities of life with cookies. I think he's a great character. But there is that kind of societal, I'm playing a role, I'm playing to expectations film that exists over it. And Edward is just going to do whatever. Much like Burton. I think you can take one look at Edward Scissorhands next to Tim Burton. You can take one look at Edward Scissorhands' hair next to Tim Burton's hair and go, okay, I see what's going on here. This is really kind of a self-insert. And it's kind of about how his own expression of his ideas and passions doesn't necessarily fit with other people's. And I think anybody can relate to that. There's a line towards the beginning where aged Winona Ryder refers to Edward Scissorhands as all alone, unfinished and all alone. And I think everybody at some point in their life has felt unfinished and all alone. We've all been in high school. We've all gone through an emotional doldrums at some point. Some of us may still be going through emotional doldrums in our 20s.
Oh dear.
Whoa, oh my gosh.
Don't let him know.
And I think that's really relatable and means that pretty much anybody can watch Edward Scissorhands and get something out of it.
Yep.
So that's everything I've got on the roster. Any final thoughts before we move on to the week in review?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess more props to Winona Ryder. We didn't talk about her much, but I think she's pretty much perfect, and does well to embody, like, simultaneously is very genuine towards Edward in the latter half of the movie, but is also kind of fits that mold of a stereotypical, like, high school girl that everyone desires, and kind of mixes in with the jocks, and does well to sort of hark back, I guess, I don't know what the word is, to the 80s, and there's more of that sort of sentimentality tied into her character on both sides of the spectrum. So I think she does well, and I don't like Anthony Michael Hall. I just don't. I'm sorry.
In anything or just in this?
In anything. He ruined nerds in 16 Candles, and then he ruined jocks in this. So he pretty much just ruined everyone for me.
I think he just. Oh, go ahead, Zach.
Oh, I was going to say, I like Anthony Michael Hall. I guess I'll make those my final thoughts. I like Anthony Michael Hall. And I like how he plays against type in this, because in the 80s he played a lot of kind of sheepish nerds. He was a nerd in The Breakfast Club, in 16 Candles. He played Bill Gates at one point, so the ultimate nerd. But in this, he's kind of playing against type as a jock and a bully, and I think he performs well, despite the fact that his role is kind of just that, jock and bully. Although his coat has mom and dad on it, which is kind of weird.
Yeah,
but
Yeah, he's just got the Kirk Douglas effect or something. His face.
Maybe.
Yeah, when I saw him, I didn't even recognize him for a second, and I was like, wait, I've seen that, like,
Yeah.
you just got that kind of face, you know. And it's just like, I know who he is now. That's why I don't trust him. But I'm indifferent. No, I think he's okay. I think Breakfast Club and 16 Candles are like the only two movies I care about him in at all, in my opinion. In terms of Winona Ryder, I think she got a little bit better towards the end of her career. I feel like what was it? The Crucible, I think, not The Crucible. What was that? What am I thinking of? It's really obvious. I don't know why I don't know what it is.
I don't know.
It was one of her first. It was one. No, she was pretty good. Dracula.
Beetlejuice?
But anyway, she was good in Beetlejuice, obviously.
Yeah.
But there was the only scene that bothered me in this. I was mostly indifferent with her, but the one scene that bothered me was when she was like, "Just go," and I was like, "Man, I could have acted that better." That was like, just go, and I was like, "Oh, okay." But yeah, she was all right. I like her in general. And you know, in Stranger Things, I think she does an exceptionally good job.
Yeah,
and I think
definitely.
I think that's one of her best roles. Not to talk about Stranger Things, but anyway, yeah, I really like this movie. I think if you at all like any Tim Burton films at all, you will definitely like this. It is just oozing with Tim Burton, and if you like Vincent Price at all, it would behoove you to see this as well, just for the fact that he's in it at all. So, 4.5 out of 5.
Maybe watch Abominable Dr. Phibes and this, and then watch our 2 episodes back to back. That could be a good double feature. Prime Vincent Price and end of career Vincent Price. A nice duo. But all right, moving softly on to the week in review. This is a new segment we introduced in season 2 to talk about media we've watched since the last episode. What have we been watching?
Mitchell, you first.
Oh, I don't know. We watched 3 things, and I wanted to choose one of them.
I'll choose whichever one you don't choose.
Okay.
And I won't choose either of them.
Okay, well then, I will take Downfall. Why not? Let's just get myself canceled today. Bruno Gantz, one of the best, probably the best dictator portrayal I've ever seen in a movie by far.
The man.
Perfectly accurate. I mean, it's insane. But anyway, Downfall I gave a 4.5 out of 5. It is a German film, and it is one of the best German films I've ever seen. And it represents the last, I guess, like 10 days of Hitler's reign. And just seeing everything crumble apart, and all 3 of us were like, this is so sad. And like this is like you actually feel bad for them, which is the worst part about it, is that you actually feel bad for them. Seeing all the Nazis kind of just, and all of the infantry generals just like completely just falter and not know what's going on, and just completely crumble. It's like nothing. It's like a costume party basically. It's a bunch of
strings cut.
Yep. And it's just so depressing, and at the same time, almost satisfying, because in retrospect, thinking about it, it's satisfying to know that it ended that way. And for a lot of people, and it's really a spectacle to behold, and I highly recommend it to anybody who's interested in the war in general, or just wants to see something really compelling, see really good, compelling, believable performances, because there was not a single moment I was thinking that this was a film. This plays exactly like a documentary, like the History Channel all of a sudden really cared about the reenactments and hired like the best actors ever. And it follows Traudl Junge, who's the typewritist or the speechwriter for Hitler. And I think she's okay to follow. She's one of the major references for the film anyway, for the historical accuracy, which is very good. But I highly recommend it. Definitely watch it if you can handle it being sad, because we also had watched Schindler's List, so this is downward spiral. But
we bummed ourselves out over the past week.
Yeah, but I highly recommend it. Look up the premise and think if it interests you at all. I think it's very, very compelling and very telling about humanity, and depressing.
Yeah. No, I wasn't. I said I was going to talk about something else, but I will just say, totally second that recommendation. That's probably the closest I've come to giving something a 5 without giving it a 5. I gave it a 4.5. And Zach actually gave it a 5, which is a big deal because Zach never does that for anything ever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it really hit all of us quite hard. And like 2 hours in, I don't remember what the next. You keep thinking it can't get worse, and then it gets worse.
Yeah.
Like 10 more times it gets worse, and it's just devastating. And Mitchell summed it up really perfectly. So I don't have much more to say, but I highly recommend it. Even if you think it would make you uncomfortable, I think it's worth a watch.
Yeah.
We also watched a little bit less notable, but Enemy at the Gate.
Yay! Shut up!
Gunfire.
And it was pretty good. I gave it a 3. I mostly enjoyed it. Who else is in this? I'm not gonna try to say the Fiennes names. The less famous
Joseph
Fiennes brother.
Joseph Fiennes. There you go.
He's really good. I think he's kind of the best thing about this film. He's very unsettling and probably the most immersive and effective performance in this. And there's some pretty cool sniper action and pretty good intro action stuff. So if you're looking for lighter World War II fare, I would recommend this one to you.
Yeah, it's got Ron Perlman in it too. Yeah,
Briefly, yes.
And then Bob Hoskins is Khrushchev.
Yeah,
which is funny.
It's got a good cast. Now, in contrast to these dark, dour war movies, I'm going to talk about Boogie Nights, which I watched last night and gave a 5 out of 5 because it is a great movie. And it stars Mark Wahlberg in a great movie. It's directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, and essentially the movie is about a 17-year-old kid who finds himself embroiled in the adult film industry in the late 1970s when porn was big. For those who don't know, there was a period in the 70s where like pornographic films were like major blockbuster hits at the box
really
office.
Yeah.
And adult films were booming. It's known as the golden age of porn. So this kid played by Mark Wahlberg makes it big in the industry, and then the 80s hit and things start to go downhill. And it is great. There are all these characters who are involved in the adult industry in the film, and you like pretty much all of them and are genuinely like compelled by them, and they have real friendships with each other, and you really kind of buy into this almost like family industry they have. Between the director, the producer, and they have this strong bond between all of them. And you totally buy into it. It's great. It's fantastically made. It's funny and also exciting. And towards the end, really, really thrilling and gripping. And I cannot recommend it enough. I know that kind of what the plot is about will turn off a lot of people. But I promise you that if that premise doesn't immediately make you go, no, I am a good Christian viewer, then you will really enjoy it. So Boogie Nights, 5 out of 5, recommend.
Okay.
Could have
Maybe
just said
not
you
for
watched.
Nana, though.
Yeah,
No,
not for Nana.
Not for Nana. The final shot of this movie is not for Nana at all.
Could've just said
I'll leave you to assume what that means.
You could have just said you watched Phantom Carriage again, Zach.
No, because they know I like that movie. But okay, we're going to move on to another segment. This is a new one. Mitchell's Munitions Minute. This is a minute of time in our episodes where Mitchell gets to talk about
we're
any
keeping that, Christian.
weapons-based content that he found interesting in the film we watched that week. So, Mitchell, you have precisely 1 minute to talk about, weapons-wise, what you found interesting in Edward Scissorhands. And start.
So he has a lot of variety of scissors. No, okay. So the police officer and Nerd Boy had Anthony had a Colt Python, which was manufactured in the late 50s and used extensively throughout the 20th century. It was originally made by Colt, obviously, and 357 Magnum cartridge, and it was made for markets, so it was actually mostly made for civilian use. It also was used by law enforcement and occasionally military forces. So there you go, a Colt Python. A lot of people, firearms experts, say that it's one of the best revolvers ever made. And it's a 4-inch barrel version in the movie. So there you go.
Okay. Because I'm used to seeing those in films with a much longer barrel.
Yeah.
Okay. You did that in less than a minute. Bravo.
Thank you.
Okay, that was Mitchell's Munitions Minute. Now on to Christian's Magical Cinema Tour.
Oh,
We're fitting them all in this episode.
Yes.
Christian, what classic cinema have you been watching since our last episode?
Well, as some of our viewers may already be aware, the Criterion Collection is having a pretty big sale this month. And your boy has been taking part in the sale a little too much, maybe. But most recently, I watched Ikiru, a 1952 film directed by Akira Kurosawa that is pretty freaking amazing, emotionally devastating, and also really emotionally affirming, I should say. It follows this middle-aged man who works in this bureaucratic office and kind of spends his days stamping a lot of things and not caring much about his work and just going through the motions of life without really living it, until he discovers he has stomach cancer and only has 6 months to live. And he finally starts living. And it's a really powerful premise, told in an interesting way that I'm sure was utterly groundbreaking for the 50s. Parts of it are nonlinear, and there's some really devastatingly powerful moments at the end. The pacing takes some getting used to. It is, of course, in black and white and subtitled and in Japanese, which is maybe a roadblock for some people, but I think that the messages in here are truly universal to everyone, because we all know what it feels like to be alive, or maybe we don't know what it feels like to be alive, and that's what this movie is about. And I think it's tremendously important. I give it a 4.5, but I think it's likely that I'd give it a 5 in the future if I rewatched it, and I recommend it to pretty much anyone who can get through it. It is tremendously, tremendously important.
Okay.
May have to check that out.
Yeah. It is a great film.
And it's on HBO Max right now, I believe.
Yeah, there's a lot of Kurosawa on HBO
not
Max.
giving
That's a
them
good
my money.
avenue. And the Criterion channel also has a lot of Kurosawa as well. Okay. Now, on to The Rundown, our first and most prominent segment.
All the bits today. All the bits. All
Every
right.
last one of them. They keep coming.
1 minute. We're going to quiz Zach with stuff that happens or other things pertaining to Edward Scissorhands, the film we discussed today. And Zach's going to respond with a rating out of 5. Mitchell, are you ready to start us off?
Yeah.
Excellent. 3, 2, 1, go.
Johnny Depp, concerned face.
4 out of 5.
Princess Bride style bedtime story.
3 out of 5.
Another building on a hill.
3 out of 5.
Mitchell Bardsley as Bill the Dad.
4 out of 5.
The Winsome Wahini, which looked charming on you.
3 out of 5.
Or the Bahamini Bliss.
2 out of 5.
Liking them both.
3 out of 5.
Them TV programs.
2 out of 5.
Anthony Michael Hall as the jock.
4 out of 5.
Thrilling haircuts.
3 out of 5.
Kevin.
3 out of 5.
Vincent Price existing.
5 out of 5.
You can't buy the necessities of life with cookies.
5 out of 5.
Zach as Isn't It Obvious?
4 out of 5.
Bank.
4 out of 5.
Scissor Sounds.
3 out of 5.
Blonde Winona Ryder.
3 out of 5.
Ice sculptures snowing on an entire neighborhood.
4 out of 5.
Alan Arkin singing I Saw 3 Ships.
4 out of 5.
Tim Burton being a highly imaginative character.
4 out of 5.
Not knowing what bowling is.
3 out of 5.
Danny Elfman.
4 out of 5.
And it's Treasure for Scars.
4 out of 5.
Yes!
Wow, we have like 3 seconds to go.
Zach Garrigus as Isn't It Obvious?
We're doing it all.
I'm just kidding.
Wow, all right.
And we got a 5 from Zach there, which is only
we already
happened
did that
a
one.
few
I missed
other
it.
times.
Yes. Christian read that one.
It was just so good. It was so good.
Can't remember what it got, but
It got
Vincent Price with the 5, well deserved.
yeah, very well deserved. Rest in
5.
peace, Vincent Price. But all right, Mitchell, you are hosting next episode. What are we going to be talking about?
Well, I have to correct you, Zach. I'm not Mitchell. I'm John Kimball, and I love my car. We are going to talk about Kindergarten Cop. It's going to be amazing. We're going to enjoy it so much. It's got Arnold in it, and I think Zach's gonna give it the 5.
Well, I'll probably like it more than the movie we talk about after that.
Also came out in 1990, by the way. I have to check and see which film performed better.
Which did better at the box office, I wonder.
Yeah.
Okay,
This
so
one got $202 million. That's crazy.
Righto. If you are interested in hearing Mitchell do an Arnold Schwarzenegger impression while Christian and I just sort of sigh and roll our eyes, tune in next time to Cookie Pocket, This podcast is about film. Until then, goodbye and good night.